Victory Day is perhaps one of the, if not the most, important holidays in all of Eastern Europe. It takes place on May 8th and May 9th, depending on the country. The holiday celebrates the end of World War II on the European front, with the victory of the Soviet Union and its Western allies over Nazi Germany. It memorializes the 27 million Soviet people lost in the Great Patriotic War. It is stated that every single family in the former USSR has been affected by the war, with at least one relative that died or had been injured due to the war. This was due to the war being seen as a crisis of survival. The Nazi Germans, under the leadership of Adolf Hitler and his Aryan supremacist ideology, believed that all Slavs should be wiped out, except for collaborators such as the Ustaše regime in Croatia. As a result, a majority of the country was united for one goal: to drive out the invading Germans and restore the motherland. Although it took a long time, around 4 years, and lots of struggle, the might of the Soviet people was able to drive out the Nazi plague and restore the motherland. The Germans surrendered on May 7th, after General Alfred Jodl surrendered to the Allies in the city of Reims. The German instrument of surrender was signed on the morning of May 7th, 1945. Not long after, the Germans surrendered individually to each Allied power in separate treaties. In regards to the Soviets specifically, the Nazis would surrender when they signed surrender documents in Berlin on May 8, 1945. The Soviets were worried that the Allies and Germans would consider the instrument of surrender as a separate piece with only the Western powers. So the Germans would be forced to sign a new treaty with the Soviets under representation of the famed General Georgy Zhukov, in which some additions and alterations were implemented. Due to the time difference, the German surrender to the Soviets was celebrated on May 9th, as the German surrender was hailed in the early morning in Moscow time. The victory in Europe, commonly referred to as Victory in Europe Day or VE Day in the West, resulted in mass celebrations across the world, especially in Eastern Europe. Today will be the 79th anniversary of the Soviet victory over the Nazi plague, and I want to quickly discuss the importance and celebration of this important day. On June 24th of 1945, the first parade would be held, now referred to as the 1945 Moscow Victory Parade. Stalin ordered the parade on June 22nd, and the parade is the greatest that has ever been held on the Red Square. The holiday was celebrated for a long time, though, surprisingly, Victory Day was only made an official national holiday and non-working day in the 1960s, with different years for each individual republic under the leader of Leonid Brezhnev. In addition to the Soviet republics, Victory Day was also, and is at times, celebrated by other liberated countries, such as those in the Balkans. After the fall of the Soviet Union, most post-Soviet countries immediately recognized Victory Day as a national holiday, though they all toned down their celebration severely due to the unstable conditions they were all placed in. The Russian Federation didn't really start to properly celebrate Victory Day until Putin's rise to power, with him reinvigorating the Russian spirit and reviving many national holidays, with Victory Day in Russia becoming the most important and emotional holiday in the country. One major Victory Day pre-Putin, under the leadership of Yeltsin in 1995, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the end of the war. In addition to Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Moldova, Ukraine, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan all immediately recognized Victory Day as national holidays. The exceptions were the Baltics, Azerbaijan, and Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan recognized the holiday on March 2nd, 1999, but instead as the Day of Memory and Honor. Prior to the death of former President Islam Kadyrov in 2016, the day was regarded uneasily by the leadership, who believed the holiday commemorated too much of its Soviet colonial past. In fact, he ordered the destruction of a Soviet monument to a blacksmith, Shakhmed Shamahudov, who supposedly gave shelter to refuge-seeking orphans from the other republics during World War II. Under the new leadership, the holiday is being celebrated with more regards and freedom, with the aforementioned statue even being re-established in central Tashkent. Azerbaijan only recognized the holiday sometime in 1994, with them regarding the day as a Soviet holiday and not an Azerbaijani holiday for some reason. This was due to the rise of the Popular Front, which I'll mention in a future video. The Popular Front came into power after a military coup and was very fierce to be anti-Russian and anti-USSR. Even now, it is difficult to find anything about the Azerbaijani May 9th Victory Day, which is referred to as the Day of Victory over Fascism. All that shows up now is a new Victory Day, celebrated on November 8th. I think you might be able to deduce what this one's about. Once again, I'll mention this all in my next video, which should be coming soon. The Baltic countries have never been too close to the post-Soviet sphere, seeking to remove all relations with the Russian Federation. In fact, May 9th was the day in which the Baltics were reincorporated into the USSR, which many people from those countries believe is a worse fate than being captured by the Nazis. With the fall of the Soviet Union, the Baltic countries have been destroying much of their Soviet history, tearing down many Soviet monuments, angering ethnic Russians in those countries, and utterly disrespecting those who fought for the liberation of Europe. I personally believe that the current adverse reaction towards Victory Day, due to the implication of it being Russian, is ridiculous. I'm not defending the actions of Putin and his dictatorship, but taking out and changing traditions related to the celebration of Victory Day are utterly disrespectful and spitting in the face of all that died in the Great Patriotic War. This can be seen in the Ukrainian changes in their celebration of Victory Day, such as moving the celebration from May 9th to May 8th and renaming Victory Day to the very short Day of Remembrance and Victory over Nazism in World War II. This is all in an effort of distancing the country from Russia, though what I feel this is really doing is just disrespecting all that died in the Great Patriotic War. What many don't realize, although constantly change this to their opponents, is that many Ukrainians also fought in the Soviet army. Victory Day was never a day of celebration of Russia. It was a celebration of the collaboration and brotherhood of the Soviet nations, and it commemorated the importance of all nations in the USSR in driving out the Nazi invaders and liberating the motherland. This can also be seen with the German barring of any Russian iconography in their celebration of what they will call the 79th anniversary of liberation from fascism. In recent times, the Soviet participation in the USSR's primary role in the fall of Nazi Germany has grown more overshadowed and thrown into the dustbin, which is why I feel that we need more recognition and learning about the Eastern Front of World War II. In the modern day, too much of this celebration is being used as a political tool, both by the West and Russia. While Western and former Soviet countries want to use it to show separation from the USSR and Russia, Putin is trying to use it to motivate troops and boost morale for his war in Ukraine. Victory Day should be celebrated as the end of Nazi Germany and the victory of the motherland, and the liberation of all peoples in Europe. I wish all of my fellow former Soviets a happy Victory Day. In the future, likely in the summer, I will finally begin a long series on the history of Eastern Europe from 1917 to 1950. And I'll make sure to reopen this topic. At the moment, I am not going too far into detail into this topic as I want to save it for a much longer and more detailed video in the future. So stay tuned for that. Anyway, for those of you like me taking AP tests these 2 weeks, I bid you luck. С Днем Победы!
Победы, как он был от нас далек, как в костре потухшем таял уголек. Звезды, обгорелые в пыли, этот день мы приближали, как могли. Этот день победы, порохом пропал. Это праздник, сединою на висках, это радость со слезами на глазах. День победы, день победы, день победы. И ночи у мартеновских печей не смыкала наша Родина очей. И ночи битву трудную вели, этот день мы приближали, как могли. Этот день победы, порохом пропал. со слезами на глазах. День Победы, День Победы, День Победы. Здравствуй, мама, возвратились мы не все, босиком бы пробежаться по росе. Пол Европы прошагали, пол земли, этот день мы приближали, как могли. Этот день Победы порохом пропах. Это праздник сединою на висках. Это радость со слезами на глазах. День Победы, День Победы, День Победы. Это День Победы порохом пропах. Это праздник сединою на висках. Это радость со слезами на глазах. День Победы, День Победы,